Thank you, ladies, for being with us tonight. And we have a special treat for you. We have Catherine Engelbrecht, True the Vote, and I want to read her bio to you, and so that you'll have a little bit of information before she starts to speak. Catherine is the founder and president of True the Vote. Catherine is a mother, a business owner, a native Texan, and long life practitioner of common sense. She entered a full-time calling in grassroots activism starting in 2008 when she could no longer watch silently as big government acted in stark contrast to America's principles of personal liberty and economic freedom. In 2010, she started True the Vote, a citizens-led effort to restore honor and integrity to our electoral system. True the Vote educates voters, trains, and mobilizes citizens to work at the polls, researches the veracity of voter rolls, and advocates for election code reform. True the Vote is now the nation's leading voters' rights organization. Catherine believes when a government isn't held accountable, it inevitably abuses the rights of American citizens. So when she learned the Internal Revenue Service was targeting her organization and others, Catherine stood her ground and took action. In 2013, True the Vote embarked on a precedent-setting lawsuit against the IRS and its top leadership, leading to a historic victory in 2019. Now, True the Vote, groundbreaking use of cell phone data has revealed staggering levels of fraud in the 2020 election. As a nationally recognized spokesperson on voters' rights and free speech, Catherine appears regularly on television and talk radio. She has testified numerous times before Congress and state legislators and speaks to grassroots organizations across the nation. Catherine has received national recognition for her work with True the Vote, including the CPAC Ronald Reagan Award, the Horowitz Foundation and Taylor Award, the Breitbart Stand With Award, along with dozens of state and local organization commendations for leadership and strength under fire. Catherine, thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you, Julie, and to everyone for the invitation. Given that I am late, and I am so sorry, I have been on Zoom calls all day long, and I don't know why this just wasn't meant to be, but here we are. So let's kind of cut to the chase. There's many things that I could share with you. There's all kinds of stories I could share about the past, but what's most important now is what's ahead in these next, I think it's 201 days before the general election. And there are some very specific ways that we can all be involved and stay engaged and do all that we can to secure as much as possible the election in November. And I want to make sure and leave enough time for questions. So, why don't I just jump in and give you a little bit of background first, I guess. True the Vote, as was said, I got involved in 2008. I started True the Vote as an official 501c3 in 2010, and it has been quite the odyssey ever since. I have found myself, prior to starting True the Vote, I'd never been in court. Since starting True the Vote, I've never been out of court. We are under 4 lawsuits right now. We are winning them one at a time, which has been great, down to 4. So that's encouraging. And we will win them all, but it's just going to take time. About a year and a half ago, I found myself in prison, which was certainly something I would have never expected. Was in solitary confinement for a period of time and released through emergency ruling of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals due to our exposure of a group that by the name of Konnech that was running election software management services, ostensibly out of Michigan, but in reality out of Beijing, and all of the data, all of the customer support, all of the practices of the business were being operated not just out of China, but on the same server series as China's Communist Party People's Congress elections. We turned all of that over to the FBI to no avail. They turned their sights on us, tried to make us out to be the bad guys, and that ended ultimately, for a period of time, ended in a very unfortunate way. But ultimately, it all kind of came out in the wash, I guess. Connick dropped their lawsuit against us. We were released from prison. But only recently there's actually been new news as of yesterday that the assistant district attorney who out of Los Angeles County, who had gotten an indictment against the CEO of this company and was sidelined as a result of it. Longer story for maybe a different time where I'm glad to answer questions about it. But the point is now more is coming out. It's been a long road since 2020. We have taken on so many big projects and have taken a lot of flack. We have been attempted to be discredited through the mainstream media, and so thank you to all of you that know our work and that have continued to stand by us. Everything we've ever said is true, and it will all come out over time, I'm certain. But it's been a hard road. So where we find ourselves now, I believe, looking down the barrel at 2024s is not really all that much different than in 2020. Certainly, thank God, we don't have the pandemic to contend with, but it was through the pandemic that the fog of COVID gave reason for hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits and thousands of procedural changes across the country that fundamentally changed the way that we manage our elections. And many of those things are still in place today. So what we saw in 2020 was the push towards the mass mail out of ballots, the underpinned, of course, by inaccurate voter rolls, which made for catastrophe when you start mailing out ballots to places and people that don't live there any longer or maybe never even existed, but give them all opportunity to vote and vote into drop boxes that are unmonitored. And so it was really a engineered chaos of a sort that the country had never seen. And I think of all the difficult things that came out after 2020, the one benefit, and maybe only one, is that America now has its eyes opened. And it's been year upon year that more and more has been revealed, that more and more of the conspiracy theories have been proven to be true. And that will continue. This is a long battle, and we didn't get where we are in our election process. We didn't get here overnight. It's taken a long time. I could make a solid argument to you that this has been going on since the Voting Rights Act in the early 60s. After the passage of the Voting Rights Act, there was a time in our country where everything was a level playing field. We had removed all the barriers to participation, and it should have been a glorious moment where we could have solidified the process. But instead, what happened was you see the far left immediately start to make moves to minimize the process, to create barriers and division between the parties, between races. And that continues, of course, as we know, to this moment. And so many things have happened to get us to a place of the level of instability where we find ourselves today. But we're sick, but we're going to get well, and it's just like getting sick took time. It's going to take time to get well. But there's so many things that we can do now. In addition, though, to what happened in 2020 and the fact that we're rolling forward so many of the issues that first were introduced to us all in 2020, now in 2024, we are looking at what I believe the sleeper issue of this cycle, which is, I believe, the non-citizen voting problem. And we can talk about that in any level of depth, but it's a very real problem. And frankly, there's not an awful lot we can do about it except educate ourselves and speak out and understand how it's possible that non-citizens would be voting. We understand sort of the fringe elements of we know that the borders are open. We know that the migrants are being registered for programs, but we have the media telling us they could never vote because it's illegal. Well, the whole thing is illegal. Open borders is illegal. Why is that stopping anybody? Do we really believe that a regime like we currently have in power in the White House would go to the lengths we have seen them go to across the board, dismantle our country, make us almost unrecognizable? Do we really believe that they would say, oh, but we've accidentally let in 10+ million migrants and we won't use them to vote to retain power, when they see their polling numbers sliding backwards day upon day from real American voters who are telling the administration to stop. They don't care. There are trillions of dollars at stake. We are truly the last shining city on a hill. And if we don't get involved and recognize that there are certain problems that right now are out of scope for us, we can't do a whole lot about it, but we can speak out and we can bring pressure. And I believe we're going to get some supernatural breaks along the way. I believe if we fight the righteous fight, that the Lord will honor that. And we see it all the time. This is just a new level that we're fighting against. So all of that said, let me quickly go to what True the Vote's doing that you can be a part of. And there's a few things. The first is a program called Scan, Check, Protect. It's a great program. It is great for sharing. Here's the deal. And you can go to our website. This is all on the truethevote.org website. And if you like the programs that I'm describing this evening, and you want the bones of the program, so you can run it yourself without True the Vote's involvement, we're so good with that. We just want the work to get done. It's not about getting credit. It's just about sharing and sharing things that we have found that work, and we'll be glad to share that with your organization as well. But Scan, Check, Protect, the idea is we've created a one-page app where you can scan the QR code, and if you're not registered, you can get registered in any state in the country. If you are registered, the check part is check your registration now and make sure that it's accurate, make sure that it's active, make sure that there's nothing out of place, and if there is, you have time to make corrections. And the protect part is the one that really blows people away. The protect part is related to the fact that if you have moved from the state from which you were originally registered to any other state, most people think, well, that those records get canceled out because I've moved and everything else catches up with me. Surely my voter registration, somewhere along the way, that gets taken care of. But the fact of the matter is it generally doesn't. And so you may well have, if you've lived state to state to state over your adult life, it's entirely possible that you have a list of states that you have lived in previously that still have your voter registration and active. This is something that you should take effort to get removed. And so what we've done is created a path for you to identify in other states, any other state that you've ever lived in. You can look to see if you're still registered. And if you are, we give you the steps that are required by the state or the county to have your name removed. Please, please check this out. We've had people, we go and we offer this particular program at live events all over the country. And we just have person after person who does the protect part, who's checking in the states where they previously lived in real time, standing there with us. And they're blown away to see that not only are they still registered, but in some cases, they've been voting and they had no idea. So this is something that we can all do and that we can recommend to our family and friends. It's not a big lift, takes just a few minutes, but the payoff is exponential. A great way to help get the voter rolls clean. The next program that we have that you might be interested in is something called IV3, and it stands for Independent Voter Verification and Validation. It's a project of True the Votes, but you can find it on a website called iv3.us. You can also find it on our website, but the app itself is at iv3.us. This is an effort to clean up the voter rolls across the country, and what we have done is created a process that allows you to volunteer. We get your registrations and make sure that you are lined up with within your proper county, and then we give you access to your county voter rolls. We serve up the records. We do a pre-sift to identify those records that appear to be ineligible on the basis of comparison to other commercially available databases. And then we serve up one record at a time. We serve that record up for you to see it, for you to evaluate based on the information that we found, and it's all sourced, for you to look at, even if you want to look at the properties, every single address. We have 211 million voter records. They've all been geocoded, which means that you would be able to look at the address from Google Earth. You would be able to see the house and then see the vacant lot, and you decide for yourself if that address or if that registration should be challenged. If you choose to challenge it, then those challenges all accrue to your account. You can then download those and submit them. If you've not heard of a voter challenge, most states have a provision that allows for a voter in a jurisdiction to challenge the voter registration of someone else in the same jurisdiction or county. And this is it's a very simple process. You can submit the records to the county, and then the county is obliged to review what you've provided. The goal, of course, being that they would flag in their voter registry the problems that you've identified in the interest of helping correct the problem before we get to November. While it is true that many counties will not look at those challenges, the exercise of going through and proving the problems is more valuable than you can imagine. It's so important that as a movement, we go into this eyes open, so that you don't have to be, on the sidelines or in the spectator seats just wondering, is it true about the rolls? Are there really that many problems? You can see it for yourself. We'll show you record by record by record. We're basing our comparisons primarily on residency, on type of address. So if it's a commercial address, if it's a vacant lot, if it's an inactive address, we'll show you all of that. And of course, if people have moved, we show you not only where they're currently registered, but where they've moved to. So all of that is available. We take you through every single step. And our goal with that is that we want to challenge, or help voters to challenge, every ineligible record in the country. And right now we know for a fact that over 25 million records that are active on the voter rolls are in fact ineligible according to standard. Something must be done. And I'll say one more piece about cleaning up the voter rolls, which we believe is just it's the gateway to election fraud. If you have bad data governing the process, you're going to have inaccurate elections. You just can't help but have it. We did a project in Georgia in 2021, ended up getting sued by Stacey Abrams and Mark Elias and the Biden Justice Department, and end up winning. But in that state, we helped citizens across the state to challenge 364,000 ineligible records. Why would there be so many? It may surprise you to learn that Georgia, not unlike other states, has a very curious process by which they clean the rolls. In Georgia, they only look at the accuracy of the rolls once every other year in odd years in the first 6 months of the year. That means that Georgia took a look at its voter rolls in the early part of 2023. They challenged, or they cleaned about 100,000 and change records, and now they're not going to look at them again until 2025. We know, as a practical matter, that currently over 400,000 records in Georgia should be challenged. That's just one example. And so, and the lawsuit, by the way, we won. We proved the point that citizens should be able to ask these questions. But the more troubling thing is there's no reason that this should be going on at all. In private industry, businesses can validate identity, residency, and citizenship in real time, all day, every day. This is not a heavy lift. The data exists. Data sharing within government agencies exists. The technology exists. So why then are our rolls in shambles? It's not that we have any missing component of the equations, save one, and that is political will. This is a problem that if we bring enough pressure to bear, can be remedied before November. It is not a hard thing. And I can go into any level of depth about how it would actually can be processed. Companies like LexisNexis, for example, have access to all the data that is necessary to help manage rolls in a level of excellence that we've not seen in this country in a very long time. They used to do this. Why did they stop? Because lawfare happened and they started getting sued. And so now we've got a situation where vendors are reluctant to participate because they don't want to get sued. We've got to create a favorable environment for them. But the great thing is companies like LexisNexis, like Thomson Reuters, are already on approved vendor lists called the GSA lists. They have open blanket purchase orders with the federal and state government. They already meet all of the federal criteria. They are bonded, they are insured, and they can do the job. This is not a heavy lift for them. Hundreds of millions of records It's routinely done. So this is something that's very, very doable, and it's critical that we get it done. And then the last thing, we have other things. I mean, True the Vote has this year branched out into, we have an entire Latino outreach effort called Voto Honesto. If you go to our website, you can toggle into English or Spanish. All of our material is available in Spanish. We're working on in events all across the country with the Latino community, which is amazing and has been just fabulous to see and wonderful to be a part of. And of course, we provide training, and there's all kind of stuff you can find on our website. But the last thing, and I'll close with this, is the concern about non-citizen voting. I believe that where we are headed with this, and mercy knows, I pray that I am wrong. But what I am seeing is and what we have all seen, is that the open borders are leading to all manner of chaos. NGOs are there at the borders and further into the country as migrants are moved, registering those non-citizens for social service programs. All of those social service programs, because of the NVRA that was passed in the early 90s, all social service programs have baked into them voter registration applications. During the Obama administration, the standard was changed. You don't have to opt in when you're being enrolled in a social service program like welfare or food stamps or free health care or HUD housing, of course, driver's licenses, Social Security work permits. All of those have voter registration applications attached. And now, because of what the Obama administration did, you don't have to opt in to, by extension, in enrolling in those programs, you opt in to be registered to vote. You have to opt out. So it's almost an automatic thing. And we know that the NGOs working there at the border are not Trump fans. They are working on in the interest of fulfilling, frankly, President Biden's 2021 executive order, which was a call out to all federal agencies making voter registration a priority. And they've done just that, and they're doing it at the border. Now, the next step is, okay, they're being registered. Surely they're being prevented from being added to the voter rolls. No, they're not. Why not? Because states don't have the access to the data that they need to determine citizenship eligibility. States have access to one database. It's called the SAVE database. And while it does have benefit, there's two big problems. The first is it's not looking at real-time or near real-time migrant numbers. I wouldn't have any reason to believe that the SAVE database includes the millions that have come across just this year. SAVE is looking at a longer immigration path, and it requires that you as the user come to the database already understanding what the immigration status is, and you're checking the status based on information that you know. So it's a very different setup. It's also a setup that requires that you check one record at a time. And so when you've got the overwhelming number of registrations, as we are seeing coming into the states, expecting that you're going to try to do a paper chase and check one registration at a time, it's just not being done. Florida actually tried this in 2012. They sued for backdoor access to SAVE because they wanted to be able to check at scale. They won the lawsuit, and in 2013, they started checking for the first time their entire roll. But because they've received so much pressure from left-leaning groups that they abandoned the project and no longer do that at all. So it's a big problem, and states don't have the access. Lastly, I'm not sure if you saw this, but a couple of weeks ago, Senator Dick Durbin and of other Democrat senators wrote a multi-page letter to President Biden begging him to give a free pass for citizenship and amnesty now. And I believe that is setting the predicate for what I believe we could be looking at in the not too distant future, which is an executive order from Biden granting amnesty and citizenship and immediately making all of these tens of millions of non-citizens eligible to vote. Yes, the executive order can be contested, but it will cause, depending upon the timing, it will cause sufficient confusion at the polls that there will be no way, when you take everything else I've said about the lack of visibility, the lack of ability to confirm citizenship status, it will be chaos at the polls. And that is, in my opinion, frankly, exactly what they want. America is awake. Forget about the R or the D at the end of a voter's name. At this point, you're either for saving the country or you're not. And there's a very small group that doesn't want to save the country. They're loud, but they're small. They're small in number. Most of America is fed up with what's been happening, and they are going to go to the polls and vote for freedom. They are going to vote for against the regime that has brought us to this breaking point. That's why I believe that it would make sense that the Biden administration would have cultivated, groomed this new voting bloc that they can whip into action. And whether or not the actual migrant himself or herself ever votes, the record is there. And the record plus the dirty voter rolls, plus mail-in ballots, plus drop boxes, we go back into the, wash, rinse, repeat that we did in 2020. So all of that to say that the stakes could not be higher. It could not be more urgent for us to make this a priority. There are so many things that we can do now with helping to get the voter rolls clean, to establish an awareness around the problem, because it can be fixed before November, to establish an awareness around what's going on with the non-citizen status. There's no reason that states shouldn't be given access to the appropriate federal databases and add that into their check for citizenship certification or verification of the voter rolls. Totally doable, not a big lift, can be done before the election. And we should be prepared that if, I pray to God this does not happen, but if an executive order is signed by President Biden to grant citizenship and amnesty and therefore voting rights, we must have a game plan to push back against that immediately. I hope it doesn't happen, but not a whole lot else makes sense. It's also incredibly important that there's no polling place left unmanned, that you have plenty of staffing at absentee ballot review boards and at central count. So many things that I know that's all what your organization has for so long done such a masterful job of, is making sure that you have motivated volunteers working in those positions. It's going to save this republic. If there's any chance, it's going to be through this election and making sure that we are all hands on deck. So True the Vote is all in. We have put our waders on and jumped in, and here we are. It's a privilege to be able to speak with all of you, and I'm glad to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Catherine. If you will raise your hand, if you have a question for Catherine.
Raise that one more time. Okay. Jolie.
Hi, I'm in the construction industry, and I've known for quite a long time the E-Verify system, which is run by the US government. Each employee has to be run through the E-Verify system to confirm that their social security number is accurate and they are in fact a citizen. Well, these illegals purchase social security numbers, put them through the E-Verify. The government says, oh yeah, just fine, and off to work they go. This has been going on for a long time. The government has no incentive to actually verify these purchase social security numbers, because guess what? The government makes money off of the taxes that are being paid by the illegals into our system. Can you comment on that?
You're right. It's true. It's troubling. The E-Verify standard feeds into the SAVE database. And so you would think that, okay, well, that's at least one bit of clarity. But as you rightly point out, when you have counterfeit documents, it's just, you're really not correcting anything. It's just a problem that keeps growing larger. Groups like LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters, and frankly, just what happens in private industry with big data management companies, is they look at a pattern of life around an entire person. And so if things don't add up, they will flag that for further review. We've allowed our processes to erode so far, and it's hard to really know exactly where to jump in to put your finger in the dam, because the water's starting to shoot through in a lot of different places. But there are services out there that can and do a masterful job of managing the data, because they can compare it against other things. So if this is true, then why aren't these other things true, or vice versa? And it would allow for states to make at least more educated decisions. It won't stop everything, but it will stop a lot. Yeah, the last thing I want to do, friends, is leave you all with this image or fear that everything is has fallen away. That's not the case. But there are problems, just as you rightly point out, with the E-Verify system. And you see Social Security's being purchased. It's a nightmarish condition, but it can be fixed. It can't be fixed before November, but you're right. It's happening. It's happening at scale, and it's going to be a few rocky months here coming, and all of these things are, they'll stop at nothing to win this election.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Carol.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, I would like to thank you so much for speaking with us today. I've followed you and Mr. Phillips and True the Vote for a while now on X, and I'm just so impressed with all the work that you've done. I wanted to ask, it seems my impression from the 2020 election is that there were a handful of counties around the country that really, by being manipulated, were able to sway or put the Biden regime into power. Do you, without maybe giving away more than you would want to, do you feel that True the Vote has an idea of which counties need particular attention, or how do you approach that aspect of the election for 2024?
A great question. So yes, we are looking and really trying to be wise in our evaluation. The playing field has changed substantively. I submit to you, when you look at where migrants are being moved to, like cattle, to key locations, there's reasoning behind all of this. Never let a crisis go to waste. They're positioning and they're being very strategic about what it is that we're doing, and so we need to be wise about recognizing that and being prepared to take appropriate action. So yeah, we're looking closely. But the other thing about what True the Vote is providing is that it's kind of like, at the level of getting the voter rolls clean, or recognizing what's going on with non-citizen voting, or broad training. This is something that we can do at scale. And so it's just as important for the voter in Montana as it is for the voter in Florida, as it is for the voter in Texas. So we're looking hard. Yeah, we have we have empirical evidence just based on past issues that Georgia is going to be a problem. Pennsylvania is going to be a problem. Michigan's going to be a problem. Wisconsin's going to be a problem. Arizona is going to be a problem for sure. So those are places that we're really focused in on. But what I'm saying constantly these days is that voting this cycle, just voting, is not enough. Doesn't matter where you live. You need to be plugged in, vote and serve, and by all means continue to pray. But we've got to make sure that we are as engaged as we have ever been this election cycle.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take one more. Jamie.
Aloha, Catherine. Jamie Detweiler from Hawaii.
Hi.
Hi. We live in a super majority Democrat environment here. Our legislature is super majority Democrat. And so we've tried to tackle the issue of cleaning our voter rolls from different angles. And the latest one that we've done, I belong to a grassroots organization called Audit the Vote Hawaii. And we introduced legislation. Our small Republican caucus accepted 5 of our bills, but where it gets stopped by the committee chair, and it never sees the light of day, and the public never gets to hear about it. So We've tried to introduce legislation. Also, Hawaii voters, when they register to vote, they do not need to have an ID. So that's another area that we're battling. Do you have any other strategies for us in our attempt to help clean the voter rolls here?
I can tell you that we have Hawaii's voter rolls, and could maybe do a side by side of what we have, and maybe, you know, be a force multiplier for you. We'd be glad to do that.
Right.
You know, at the oh, go ahead.
Our own chief of elections, that is equivalent to our state secretary. So our chief elections officer admitted on camera that we have over 100,000 registered voters that are questionable. They have either been deceased or moved. And when we ask him about it and what he's doing about it, he dances around that question. So it's been quite a battle here, but we're still we're not giving up, and we're continuing to battle in our little organization.
Well, let me, if I may, because there's another way to answer that question, and I'm going to now take off my True the Vote hat for just a minute and put on a different hat, a political hat. What underpins the things that True the Vote does relative to data is a platform called Ground Fusion. Ground Fusion has 211 million voter records, and it's great for election integrity work. But, and this is why I say I'm going to put my political hat on, what it also has is 200 to 300 in additional data elements about each voter, and it's aggregated from consumer data, so that you we have emails and phone numbers. And so what occurs to me is you need to get that election administrator out of office. And one of the things that Ground Fusion is offering, because we just feel so strongly about the ground game, is something called community grants, so that small grassroots organizations can have access to this data that would be far more expensive than a small group could ever hope to have. But we understand that this is where the rubber meets the road, is what's happening in your own backyard. And yes, we all want to see the top of the ticket wins for liberty. But if you can't get out of the starter's block because of the problems that you're describing, then you need to bring heat to those down ballot races. And the way to do that is to target the people that micro target the people that would help you to make a change in that election. And that can be done, and we have data to do it. So it's a different tact, and I'm glad to visit with you about that, or anybody about that. But community grants, I'm just so proud of the program that Ground Fusion's introduced, because it does empower small groups to work with data that they would never otherwise have. And we've already seen two races just recently in Alabama changed because of the introduction of Ground Fusion data. So anyway, something to think about outside of the scope of election integrity. Sometimes if you can't do anything else, you just have to beat them.
Yeah, it's an appointed position. It's not elected. And he's appointed by the governor. Democrat.
Wow. Well, ladies, I think we probably at 9:30 we probably need to close. And Catherine, thank you so much. And ladies, please go to True the Vote website, and hopefully we can connect to some of those great resources that Catherine has available. And hope that we can maybe get you back another time, Catherine.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation. We appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Everyone have a good night.